Hi guys, welcome to the Dad Bub Show. I'm one of your hosts, Ken Blowfield, and Brendo and I, we interview dads all over the world to find out their secrets on balancing how to be a high-performing dad and a high performer in life too. So without further ado, let's get into the show. Boom, and we are live. Welcome back to the Dad Bub Show. I'm your host, Ken Blowfield, with Brendo McCormack, and today we have someone, which words can't express the epicness of this superstar. He is, without a doubt... Come on, bro.
We warned you, bro.
Shit.
We warned you.
He is, without a doubt, a game changer. So for all of you dads listening out there, you are in for a real treat. Now, like a lot of our guests, to be truly epic, you need to get your feet wet in the fitness industry, and James Cant has certainly done that. Now, James, I apologize. This is going to be some big claims here. So James isn't just some fitness mob noob. This guy has trained thousands of people all over the world and has hundreds of people compete on stage from state level, national level, international level, and all those types of things, from bikini level athletes, bodybuilding, powerlifting, elite level athletes on a series of different spectrums. So this guy is pretty epic, and I must admit, this guy practices what he preaches, right? He's an IFBB Pro 2. Now, what does that mean? Well, that means he's on the same kind of league as people who are competing in Mr. Universe. And if you don't know what that is, it doesn't matter, because James is much more than that too. So this guy, since his late teens, early 20s, set up a series of companies in human performance, in online coaching, transformation, meal prep companies, and many, many more. And these aren't just little side hustles. All of his companies are generated into the millions of dollars, if not tens of millions of dollars. So this guy is pretty epic. So what does James do now? Well, above balancing all of that I just mentioned, he's now really doubled down to a singular focus. That is helping men who are extremely successful in wealth, but not as successful in their health, relationships, and living a life that's actually worth living. So James has created a system which brings back their energy, beats their stress, anxiety, depression, all those types of things that hold us back from being an unstoppable human being, so they can be a better man for their partner and a better father, most importantly, to their children. But what does that actually mean? So James works with millionaires, rubs shoulders with billionaires, and unpacks all of the bullshit that's going on in their lives. And that's right, these people too fucking have bullshit. So he unpacks them, he assesses their health profiles using a series of different techniques, inclusive of blood assessments and other types of shit. With that, he develops a game-changing guide to help you truly become an unstoppable man. And that isn't James telling me this shit. This is me, knowing people that James has worked with and understanding what they do. And this is the shit that he kind of does for people. He rubs shoulders with millionaires and billionaires and makes their lives better. So James has just become a new dad himself. And on this podcast, we're going to unpack how he's finding the new challenges of being a loving, supportive, and amazing father, also balancing his incredible businesses, his clients, other worldly successes, and also his amazing life with his partner too. And I promise, James will also share some secrets, tips, and tricks on how to be an unstoppable man for your life, spouse, relationship, and child also. So get ready for this one. It's going to be epic. James, my man, welcome to the show. And if we had some applause right now, woo!
I was like, what do you reckon, Brendo? 6 out of 10 for that intro.
6 out of 10. Yeah, well, it was just under the 3-minute mark, so it's good. But we warned you, he has epic intros. And so, James, welcome on, dude.
Thanks for having me on.
Was that about right?
Yeah, was that
about right?
Yeah, I was listening to that. I was like, fuck, I want to know this guy.
Well, one thing I want to clarify straight off the bat. So, James, I've known of you for many, many years from back in your IFBB Pro Physique days, and saw a distinct change in, I guess, your approach to the fitness industry, where you started helping, people not typically within that bodybuilding world, but more so from a health-focused world. But one thing that Ken said in your intro, that you help assess people with blood work and shit. So, could you please clarify exactly what you do and how you help people?
Yeah, I've done a heap of stuff, right? A lot of people know me from the old fitness and bodybuilding days, but in terms of now, what we do is we help guys get their mojo back. So right now, the way that everything's focused is largely based on me and all my bullshit. So I've done all the pro bodybuilding stuff, I ran all the businesses, done all that sort of jazz, and it was fun and it was great doing that. But I went through a couple of really, really rough phases that fucking sucked, within my life, and were really, really crap. And I pretty much had no support, no help. So I was there's multiple times where I've burnt out, as every business owner will at some stage. And if you haven't burnt out, you're not working hard enough and you're not really trying, and you're probably not going to be successful, right? But it's a couple of times where I burnt out and I was just super anxious, couldn't be in a conversation without my hands just trembling, always trembling. My mind was always going. I'd struggle to fall asleep. I'd wake up at 3 a.m. thinking about imaginary clients, imaginary bills, imaginary all this stuff. And it was just like my brain was working on overdrive all the time. And I was just totally burnt out. I'd have days where I was like I call it, it's like bipolar. That's what like my psych calls it. Do I really identify as having bipolar? I don't know, whatever. But I was like days where I couldn't sleep, and then days where I could do nothing but sleep. So it was like big highs and lows in there. And days where I'd like talk and I'd say all this like ridiculous shit, like all this weird stuff that I'd normally never say. And I'd look back on it like, how the fuck did that come out of my mouth? And then days where I was just like a zombie where I couldn't do it. And it's all those highs and lows. And I had, terribly low testosterone. I was like, there was one period where I was in college. That was the first time I burnt out. And I was like, I was in college, and you guys know what college is like, right? Like there's lots of girls. It's great. And I had no interest. Like I had no interest in sex or anything like that. So for to go in his early 20s to not be interested in sex, I was like, wow, that was bad.
And the physique you had at that time as well, right? Like, I mean, like girls would have been walking up the doorstep.
I tell you what, look, if you want to be I've never been able to talk to girls. Like I've been the biggest klutz my whole life. Just like that kid who walks up and is just like shaking, tremoring, doesn't know what to say. I was like, but I tell you what, fuck, getting jacked makes it so much easier. So much easier. So it's like, if you're an anti-poon like me, it's like, just get big, just turn pro in bodybuilding and you'll be fine. It'll all work itself out. But so I had all this shit. I had all the horrible stuff go on and all that. And pretty much no one helped me because they can't. No one does that. I went to doctors and doctors said, oh, don't worry about it. You'll be fine. Just rest up. So rest up? What the fuck do you mean, man? Like, I got $1 million business to run. Like, what do you mean rest up? And it's like, I went to specialists who said, everything's fine. Like, your digestion's good. Meanwhile, I haven't shat in 3 weeks. And it's like, I went to acupuncturists who just gave me the weirdest things. And I'm pro, like, acupuncture. I love Chinese medicine. I'm a big advocate, but they just did nothing for me. I went to naturopaths who I think they just had a direct line to my wallet. And that was pretty much all that they did. I've had an IV drip in my arm twice a week, paying $270 a pop for vitamin C to go straight in to try and help. I did everything, right? Every single thing that I could to get better, and no one helped me. I was still burned out. I still didn't have a sex drive. I was still highs and lows all the time. Like my digestion was still fucked. I just felt like crap. And this happened really 3 different times. It happened and no one helped me. There was one dude by the name of Ian Borden, may he rest in peace. He taught me about what we refer to now as the nervous system. So the nervous system is the governing system within the body. It controls every single movement, thought, feeling, action that we have. Absolutely everything is run by the nervous system. He taught me about using that, and particularly an area within the nervous system called the autonomic nervous system, which is like the stress center, and how to manipulate it. And when we get ourselves into a state of being excessively stressed, everything goes to shit really quickly. And how can we reverse it? And I learned from him, and unfortunately he died in a car crash, which was a big shame before he got to teach me everything that he did. And so I've been trying to pick up the pieces of everything that he's done. And, after that, that's what I want to teach now, is make it so that guys don't have to be burnt out. Because right now, seriously, if you look around, how many people are burned out and how many of those people actually get help? How many people are burned out and never ever come back from it? It's a lot. How many dudes in business are burned out, they're exhausted, they go home, they're grumpy at their kids, they yell at their kids, they yell at their wife just because they've got a heap of stress on their shoulders and they feel like they're carrying the whole world and no one's there to help them. It's like when you're in business, that's like, there's a great quote. I was reading a book just recently by a bloke called Stephen Pressfield. He's a brilliant author, and I highly recommend looking him up. It was called The Gates of Fire, I think it was. And it was dictating or recalling a series of tales and stories from back in the Peloponnesian War and the wars between Persia and Sparta, right? I'm a bit of a history nerd. And there's a line in there where King Xerxes, who is the most powerful king in the whole world, is talking to one of his subjects and is saying, it's like, that throne there is the loneliest place in the world to sit. And it's the same thing within business. Is like, you can have all the money, you can have all the success, you can be shredded, jacked, all that sort of stuff. But in business, and when you're highly successful and you're going hard, you're often incredibly lonely. Even though you have everything you always dreamed of, even though you have the fame, you have the fortune, you have the cars, you have the houses, all that shit. I've done all that stuff. And you can still be extremely lonely and no one has your back. And one thing I always wanted to do was make it so that those guys actually have someone to have their back, because no one had mine. Well, one person did, and he died, which is a shame. Selfish prick. But it's like, is that too dark? But you get what I mean? It's like you feel so fucking lonely all the time and no one has you. And you just feel like I did, where people are just draining your money. They're just taking it because you've got plenty of money to give. And they just keep taking it. And so that, in long story short, that's what we do.
Man, I want to circle to and unpack all that in just a moment, but you're just so lucky Sophie found you at a point where she didn't know you were a history nut, because I don't know if you would have got her if like she knew you were this much of a nerd. Like
Yeah. I try and generally keep that one like under the radar a little bit. But man, I love history.
Yeah, once she said I do, it's like, oh, and babe, just so you know, like I like history, I like this. That's so funny. Oh, cool. So, tell me a little bit about that, Ray, because I mean, just understanding obviously the autonomic nervous system, just even the nervous system, and then looking into the body deeper than I suppose what most people do, right? Like personal trainers and coaches, even, in the industry, they're called, extra qualified personal trainers if they've gone to uni and they've done all these different types of things. But I know you did a medical science degree, and that's very different to what a typical personal trainer would do if they want to be more qualified. They generally or typically do kinesiology, sports science, exercise science, those types of things. And the understanding of the body itself is very glossed over. It's like, here's anatomy. We've been teaching the same level of anatomy since like the early 1900s. Physiology's probably evolved and changed in what they teach there, but it's so skimmed over, and it's not really about how we can optimize human performance using physiology. It's just, here's the physiological system, good stuff, here's your physiology text, and there's no real teaching of how to unpack the information from these physiology or these nervous systems or these neurology texts to make it effective and applicable for human performance. So how did you I know you learned from your mentor, but thinking back to your days at university, did that help you kind of understand the human body better and helps you, I suppose, coach people in a better way?
It gave me a deeper understanding of the concepts that are taught. That's what it did. So first of all, the most brilliant people who I've ever learned off had literally 0 university qualifications, and some of them didn't even have high school qualifications, right? So first of all, just because someone has a degree or a PhD or whatever fucking letters before or after their name doesn't mean they can actually help you, right? I have met some of the most incompetent, stupid, moronic people at university. Right? Seriously, like some of the dumbest people. Like, you wouldn't let these guys cross the road by themselves type level, right? That's the level of stupidity at university, and they're meant to be smart. Just because someone has a degree doesn't mean they know shit. And the next thing after that, it's like you can do all the research in the world, right? All the research in the world. But if you can't coach, that research doesn't mean anything. And a lot of people, a lot of these, as I call them, boffins in lab coats, they're incredibly intelligent people in a lab. But the funny thing is that the real world exists. And in the real world, the lab doesn't mean anything. Nobody gives a fuck about what you found in your rat study or even in your human study with whatever controlled environments. In the real world, humans exist in a totally different plane. And so you've got these highly intelligent people who are brilliant in their field, but they're not good at actually coaching. And so I learned that, and I saw that at uni. That was probably actually one of the most profound things. There's 2 profound things that I learned from uni. Number one is that just because someone has studied doesn't mean they're smart, right? Or doesn't mean they're helpful, right? There's a difference between having information which is right versus helpful. And I think you'll see that in fitness a lot. Everyone's going on and flopping their cock out on the table and saying, my method is correct, I am right, all that sort of stuff. And it's like, bro, where's your results? It's like I see, I'm a big fan of Paul Saladino, Carnivore MD, and that dude gets the shit ripped out of him all the time because there's a lot of different people who are scientists and incredibly intelligent who will point out flaws in studies and whatnot and what he's talking about. But you know what they never criticize? The results he gets for people. Right, that dude has some of the most incredible results. And I think that's where a lot of people get caught up. The intellectuals want to turn life into an intellectual debate. It's like, no, it's not an intellectual debate. Do you get results? Yes or no? And that's the most interesting thing that I find is that the people who are spending all their time in the labs very rarely get the best results in the world. And I'll come back to that one in a sec because there's a key mentor who really helped me with that. The second thing after that is that, that the university taught me is that science raises questions, it doesn't provide answers. A lot of people will have a study and they say, Eureka, I found it. This is the study that solves and it proves X, Y, Z. It's like, no. It asks several more questions. That's all that it does. Science doesn't provide concrete answers, yes or no. It indicates us a direction in which to follow so that we continue to ask better questions and learn and see how we can apply it. Right? And there's a lot of ego in science. There's lots of it. And you can see it once again where being the history nerd comes into play is like you can see it throughout history. So many people say, this is the right way and you must all do it this way. And then 50 years we get down the track and think, oh, fuck. I got that wrong, right? It's like fat. You know how everyone just like last generation was like, fat is the devil. Fat is the worst thing ever. You should never eat fat because you will die of heart disease straight away. And they come back and say, oh yeah, Ansel Keys fucked up all those studies. He just fudged them all, right? So we see this arrogance within science that needs to go. That was one of the things that I learned at uni.
I love how you point that out, like there, with the arrogance in relation to like the consumption of fat. I'm just going to touch on that really quickly and then you can jump back in. And even still today, they're not letting go of their ego. They're like, oh yeah, we kind of got it wrong. You should probably eat a little bit more fat, but they don't actually talk about the benefits of fat enough. And they're like, oh, eat fat, but not too much because we don't want to tear our whole kind of identity down that we've kind of built up over the last 50 years. Like it's very crazy how they do that, and then you get people like Paul, like the Carnivore MD, kind of talking about all the amazing stuff that he does, and then he gets criticised because he's actually going against what the government's saying. But the governments they want to say that, they just can't. They don't want to rid themselves of their identity. I would imagine. Yeah,
and I think that most people would rather be wrong, right, but appear to be right, than to admit, hey, I fucked up. Maybe I should change a little bit. And once again, credit to Carnivore MD. Like he was a little bit he's pretty crazy, right? The dude's nuts in a good way. But like even like a few years ago, he was like full hardcore. I only ever eat animals. That's it. And he said, you know what? I was actually wrong. Honey and fruits are good too. Like this is good. And it says right now, rice is good as a source of calories too. So there's things like that. Anyone who can admit that they're wrong, that is who you should be looking to. Anybody who can't, anyone who's just filled with arrogance and hubris, is just going to lead you off a cliff straight away every time. And that was big. But in terms of uni and what it taught me is really those two things. Like number one, just because you got a couple of letters next to your name doesn't mean you're smart, doesn't mean you're helpful. Often they're less helpful than others. And then number two is that it asks questions, doesn't pose answers. Get rid of the arrogance. That was what we got taught straight away. Humbled really quick. And I'm an arrogant dude. Like I've always been arrogant, always been you can look at some of the shit I post on Facebook, right? There's a lot of arrogance in there. And like I had to learn that. So if I had to learn that and I still value that, I might not preach it. I might not be able to do it all the time because I'm a flawed human being in the end of the day. But if I can do that and I can try and humble myself a little bit, well, maybe everybody else should too. And that was, I go into like the key mentors who I learned from after. I learned way more from these guys than anyone else. First person who didn't actually directly mentor me, but had a flow down effect was Charles Poliquin. Charles Poliquin is, if you don't know who he is, go and Google him right now because he's possibly the greatest strength coach of all time. There are a few brilliant ones, so I'm not going to say he is, but yeah, may he rest in peace. He's an absolutely phenomenal human being for what he's done. But the key thing I actually took away from Charles is, I don't give a fuck what your science says. I give a fuck about what the results say. And that really resonated with me because 3 times I burnt out. 3 times people said, science says this will make you better. And 3 times they completely let me down. Right? The only thing that matters is results. And that's the way that we've built my company. And that's the way I do everything is I do not care about any biases that people have, any prejudices people have. I don't care how controversial the information is. I don't care what people's ego says. I care about the result because in the end of the day, I'm being paid to do a job. And I think too many people forget that. And Charles was criticized for many years. I'm probably still being criticized now. And what was interesting is I remember reading something of his that he said, where he was talking about cluster sets. We all know what cluster sets are in the gym, where you go and you bash out at a number of, high intensity sets using a small amount of rest in between. And, someone in 2006 or something like that came out and said, cluster sets, an innovative approach to training. Charles was like, I heard about this in 1985 or something like that. And then he went and researched even deeper. And the person who created it was in something like 1930s, right? In the 1930s. And so here's science 70 years later catching up to to what someone did and experimented back then. And if you look at that, what most people do is they follow the science. So they're following science, which is 70 years out of date, 70 years behind. Fuck that. I want to be the guy in 1939. Sure, sometimes I'm going to get it wrong, but more often than not, I'm going to get it right. And I'm going to be 70 years ahead of the next guy, which has allowed us to be successful. I mean, we're competing in my business in JCF. We're competing in possibly the most competitive space in the world because every Tom, Dick and Harry can claim to do what we do. I mean, you know, the internet marketing game, can you better than most? Anyone can make a raucous claim, can't they? We've all seen those things. Anyone can make a claim. But the thing that has allowed us to stay around while others have crashed and burned really quickly. I mean, you look at the cycle of an online PT. How long do they last? Online PTs, online coaches, all that. They last like what, 3 months or something like that? We've been going for close to 10 years, right? There's a reason why we can do that. It's because everything is results focused, not focused on dogma or bullshit or prejudice or bias. And that was a big thing I learned from Charles. The next guy is Rawdon Dubois. Not university educated at all, but one of the smartest men alive. He's the man who made me an IFBB pro, and I credit him with that because I was certainly not smart enough to get to that level of bodybuilding by myself. And he was absolutely massive. And yeah, obviously the third being Ian, who helped pick me up out of the shitty situation that I was in and set me onto the path that I'm currently on now. They've been massive.
So I got a few questions with the clients that you sort of work with. So we've spoken about like, wealthy people, billionaires, millionaires, that sort of stuff. But, for a lot of people, they're just everyday dads as well. And they're still going to, have the pressures and the stress and the changes in lives, the sleepless nights and all these extra things. Now, and one thing that you said that really resonated is it makes them short, it makes them grumpy, like it changes who they are. So how difficult is, or what point of awareness do your clients go, hey, something's not right and I've got to go find someone or find something? Like they have to have a trigger in their life to say, I want to change something in my life.
That's an amazing question. So it's very different for each person. For example, we know one dude who's a friend of one of our clients who whinges, bitches and moans about his fucking life, how miserable he is every single day, and he's still there. And we've been saying this for ages, like, oh, when's Scott going to hit rock bottom? And we're like, he's like, oh, well, we should be there now. And we're looking at him, we're thinking, bro, if I were you, I'd want to kill myself right now. Like, your life is that bad and you keep telling us about it. And so for him, his rock bottom where he actually does something about it is like a long way. We haven't even found that bottom yet, right? That's like, what's the trench called? The Marinas Trench, right? It's that fucking low. His is beneath that somewhere, right? And some people, that's what it is. And it takes them to go right the way down to find the rock bottom. Other people, particularly the more successful guys, will have one thing that they're unsatisfied with in their life. And I say, that is not at my standard. That is not acceptable. I'm going to fix this right now. And that's the difference. And I bet you can guess which ones the millionaires and billionaires and which ones aren't, right? If the level of standard that somebody holds for themselves as being acceptable determines when they're going to do it. A lot of Australian men have adopted the idea, and not adopted, they've been forced down their throat, the idea of, she'll be right, mate. It's okay. It's just a bit of depression. Everyone gets that. It's fine. Oh, so what? You can't shit. Oh, everyone's been constipated once in a while. Who cares that you're going to get divorced? It's fine, mate. You'll come out the other end. She wasn't even that good anyway. It's like stuff like that where we just accept these low standards. Right? We accept it. Instead of saying, hey, my marriage is in trouble. I'm not showing up. I'm not supporting her the way that I want to. I'm not happy with the sex that I'm getting. I'm not happy with some aspect of it. We just kind of like, just like are told to just sit up and put up with it. Whereas the most uncommon people, the people who are highly successful, are the ones who just say, no, this is not up to my standard. And what's interesting, right, is that it's not like the people who are millionaires and billionaires are any better than other people. There's one client of mine who's one of my most favorite clients of all times because I've been working with him for like 5 years. His name's Marcus Norton. And when I met Marcus, right, he was stone fucking broke. He had literally not a dollar to his name, and yet he still came and invested in me because he wanted his health to be better. Standards, right? Now he's about to ink a very, very substantial contract. I can't go into it, but like he's got a company which is worth tens or hundreds of millions now, right? In 5 years. Okay. And he's done that. And you look at that level of standard there, it's like he wasn't exceptional. He wasn't gifted. He wasn't given anything on a platter. He didn't have anything. He was just a regular bloke, just like you or me. But he chose to have a different level of standard of what he will settle for and what he won't settle for. Mind you, he's also running this company, which is worth a significant amount of money with many employees, while at the same time building the world's fastest supercar, right? So there's like a level of standard there that somebody has, and we can all have that standard. And if you want to make your life better, have a better standard. Just raise it. It's simple as that. And then when you have that standard where you accept, I won't accept mediocrity, I'm unhappy with something and I won't accept it, all of a sudden things change very quickly. We had a guy called Adam Nash. He was an awesome guy. He actually works for Marcus now. And this dude was, when we first met him, he was an opioid junkie. He was a drunk. He worked at Woolies stacking shelves and hated it. Nothing wrong with working at Woolies if you like it, but he fucking hated it. He wasn't there for his kids. He wasn't present. He just wanted to flick on, watch the TV. He had chronic back pain. His marriage with his missus wasn't going well at all. And then one day he said, I've had enough. I want to change it. I want to switch it. And so we helped Adam change his standards. And now he's got his income up about 5 times. So he's like literally 500% increase in his income. He's already becoming a supervisor at work. Like he's just gone through the roof that quickly. This dude he's been in this job for like 6 months. He has no business being a supervisor, but he's getting it because his standard's there and he expects that he should be a supervisor and he expects that he's going to go up the chain and he expects he's going to do super well. And so when we change our standards, immediately everything changes. He dropped the booze, he dropped the drugs, he's got rid of his back pain, everything's gone. And his missus loves the hell out of him. And you should see his kids. Like the effect, this is what I found crazy. This is very profound for me, just because when Nashi was going through this, Soph was pregnant, right? I was looking ahead of me being a father. Nashi's kids, as soon as he leveled up and accepted higher standards and higher standards alone, all of his kids did. And they're all getting awards at school. They're all going into leadership at school. They're all doing better at school and socially in every single part of them. Like they're all doing better. I was like, fuck, there's something massive in that, right? If I'm a schmuck, my kids are going to be schmucks too. But if I hold myself up to a much higher standard, they're going to follow.
You look at, I've got a family member, not actually in my family, but I suppose in my family, now that I'm married into it, kind of extended though out from this kind of the immediate family group. And he suffers from a lot of personal anxiety, personal depression. He's bipolar to a certain extent. And you look at his children and they emit the same kind of energy, right? They look anxious. They look like they're miserable. They don't kind of socialize with the cousins as much. And it's just interesting to kind of see that generational trend. But when they were young kids, they were fantastic. But now as they're aging, they're really mirroring their father a lot. And I was like, wow, this isn't something that it's just, you can call it genetic if you want to, but it's not. It's mirroring the effects of the role model that's in front of them. And that's really powerful, right? It's like that old saying, right? Show me you are the average of your five closest friends. And, in your early days, your parents are really that kind of role model. And Dan Pena has a beautiful quote. It's like, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. Right. And I love that quote. It's like, if you show me who you're associating with, I can show you where your future is going to go. And there's people that are around you really kind of push you to that next level to be either who you should be or who you could be or who you're just going to become.
Totally. And I think that one thing is being talked down so much is the importance of men and the importance of the father. If you look at like what all this woke bullshit's doing, and yes, I hope I don't get you guys cancelled for it. But my copywriter calls me James Can't be cancelled. But like you look at all this woke shit which is coming on and it's talking about how, men aren't good and men are evil and men and all this stuff which is talking down and downplaying the importance of men and the masculinity. It's fucking dangerous. Like, because I don't know what you guys know what it's like to not have a dad who's around or anything like that, but I've worked with thousands of dudes who've had dads who aren't necessarily there, and it's massively damaging. And at the same time, dads who are exceptional and dads who are around, dads who are setting a high standard, just like Nashi, just like Marcus, their kids raise as well. And the men, I'm not going to say the man's the most important figure. I'm going to say the man is the equal most important figure in the household, because husband and wife need to work as a team, or whatever you identify as, man and woman, right? The male and female. Every kid needs a very strong masculine role model and a very strong feminine role model. Every single one. And the man is being downplayed far too much, particularly as men are pushed off to work and need to go and provide and whatnot. We have this innate instinct to provide. Like when Layla was born, in the lead up to it was funny. I was changing my business so that I could step away from it. And so I could step out and the business could run autonomously without me so that I could spend all my time with her. Because I thought that I just want to be with her 24/7, 365, and that's what I want to do. As soon as she's born, it was like this switch was flicked. And I was like, no, you got to provide, man. You got to provide. Not just providing in the way of like money, but you got to provide as an example. You got to provide with your attention. You got to provide everything. And we often get taught, I went too far the other way. Most of the time people think I've got to provide with money and that's the job of the man. It's like, that is a job of the man. Right? That is a job of the man. It's like a cook saying, oh, my job's to cook up the food. It's like, no, motherfucker, you got to fucking cook it and plate it as well, right? There are multiple tasks that you need to do. We've got to provide financially, we've got to provide with our attention, and we've got to provide as an example too. Like that is a big one we often forget, and making it so that we have all three. And as soon as she was born, I was like, cool, this is like crystal clear now. These are the three areas I need to provide in. And when we have that and we have that clarity, life is so much easier and it's so much simpler to be a really cool example as a dad because you have a job description. You know that you need to make a fuckload of money for them to make sure that your family are looked after. And so that if you die, which is a real possibility and everyone needs to consider that they will be looked after if you're not dead. If you are not at this moment making as much money as humanly possible to make it so that if you die, your wife, your partner and your kids are looked after, you got to fucking have a look at yourself in the mirror straight up. And I know it's a big call. But you really got to be looking at yourself there because you are not setting them up for sustainability if you're not doing that. And at the same time, you then also need to be around and you need to be loving, caring and present. And at the same time, you need to show your high level of standards.
So just on that then, if you're to say, because, some of those things could potentially conflict. Now, typically who we interview are business owners. Yeah. Typically, who we kind of try to work with are people who are high performing in life and obviously trying to run that high performing dad life too, right? And sometimes high performing in life could mean a job. It could be a job as a professional athlete. It could mean a job as a really high executive. Now, they can't necessarily create this, let's call it time balance or whatever they do. There's a requirement for them to be in, check in at 8, not even check out at 5. Sometimes they got to work till 8 p.m. Is there a hierarchy? Is like money more important than time? And is money more important than setting the example? Or is the example the most, what is, if you were to choose one as the top priority, what is the thing that you should spend the majority of the time focusing on if you don't have the choice and luxury of obviously manipulating your time?
What do you want? I got a friend of mine who doesn't make a whole lot of money, right? Doesn't make a whole lot of money, but spends a shitload of time with his kids, and all of them are extremely successful. So he will never have a whole heap of money, and thank goodness he didn't die, but he'll never have a whole heap of money because they've always just got by, lived week to week. But his kids are exceptional athletes, like all three of them, like phenomenal, really, really top tier in the sports that they're choosing to be. So he didn't prioritize money, but emphasize the amount of time that he's spending with them, right? I equally know as many people where that's gone wrong, right? Now, the other side of it is the guy who's working 100 hours a week because he's providing. He's got a fantastic life for his kids. They've got all the dollars, all that sort of stuff. I mean, I went to a very wealthy school. I went to a place called the King's School in Sydney. It's like one of the best schools in Australia. And in there's a fuckload of kids who are really, really super wealthy, right? Their parents have made more money than God. And in there's a fuckload of kids who are totally lost and don't know what to do with their life because dad doesn't exist. Who is dad? I see him, 4 times a year type thing. And they're totally missing that father figure. And so I can sure as hell tell you right now that is not the way to go if you want to be an exceptional dad. But at the end of the day, it's your life. Is there a priority? Well, it depends on you. Do you value having material possessions more? Do you value having money and the security that money affords? If so, how much is that number? I highly recommend every single person looking to have that number in their head. I know my number for me was 10 million because if I have $10 million and if I have $10 million of assets, I know that they're going to make on average about 8% to 10% per year. That means that we've got, 3% of that to live off after inflation. And I know that my family are going to be set up. And as soon as I hit that number, I was very, very relaxed because I knew that I could die. It was a weird thing, but I knew that I could actually die and they'd be okay, which is really, really cool. The next thing we've got to look at is, how much, time do you want to go to their sporting games? Do you want to coach their team? Do you want to do all that sort of stuff? Like, do you actually want to be there? How much benefit is that going to provide to them? And then at the same time, the biggest one though that I'd always emphasize is the standard, because the standard that you set and what you accept for yourself and what you accept for your kids is what's going to dictate their success. I've seen kids with more money than God have piss poor standards, and every single time they end up doing a shitload of drugs, totally lost in life, achieving absolutely nothing, and being miserable while they're at it. I'm okay. I don't give a fuck if you don't do anything with your life and you're stoked. Like, I spent a lot of time in Bali and third world countries, and those guys over there have fuck all possessions, but they're super happy, right? And as long as you're happy, that's really the thing that matters. In my opinion, that's the most important part of life. Be happy. But at the same time, don't not have possessions. Don't not have things that you want and be unhappy and whinge about it. That makes sense?
So with you mentioned about this what I call like the provider instinct, and as soon as baby's born, it's like this switch. And the only way I could explain it to people was like, hey man, like this is ingrained in you. Like you can actually feel it. It's an instinctual thing, and it was a very sort of similar process. But from your standpoint, and a lot of the dads we interview, and I think the things that we pull out is, hey, there's no right or wrong, or everyone has a different, sort of approach or a different vision. So for you, what's your vision of James Cant as being the perfect dad? What does that look like?
I think the main area for me comes in as they start learning. I want to teach all of my kids about business. I'm going to do it from a very young age. So like I've already set up my daughter's first business, and it's there waiting for us. So I've got like chickens, and I've got I love animals too. That's another thing that I love. But breeding and selling chickens, right? That's the first thing I'm going to do. And I'm going to figure out how I'm going to teach her. It's a really cool business, really simple business, because in it you have a product which doesn't take terribly much time to maintain or manage. It's relatively low cost. The margins are pretty good, and it requires marketing and sales. So in terms of a learning experience, it's really cool. And that's what I want to impart onto my kids. Life's not all about money, right? I've learned that. I've been around a lot of wealthy people from a very, very young age, and lots of wealthy people are fucking miserable. But if you don't have money, it's a shortcut to depression, right? So you can fucking guarantee that if you're broke, you are not going to have a fun time. And so I want my kids to be able to make money. And that's what I want to impart on them. You look at, a friend recently pointed out to me what Grant Cardone's doing with his kids. He's actually, Grant Cardone, big GC, 10x everything, right? He's an interesting human being, very successful, multi-billionaire. And you look what he's doing with his kids. He pulled them out of school and said, why the fuck would I send you to school where I don't know what they're teaching you? I don't know what they're indoctrinating into, what they're putting into your brain. So he pulled them out and then taught them about business and set them up with connections, set them up with the standards of how they're going to be, set them up with the tools to actually be successful in life. Because going back off the university example, just because you do good at school doesn't mean you're going to do good at life. And so that's really what I want to do for my kids. It's like I want to make sure I've ticked the provider box, the money stuff. Probably want to double that, triple that a little bit more, bring some more there for that extra little buffer. But then at the same time, I want to be able to teach them, impart what I've known, and make my little Layla a shitload better than me. She will be a lot smarter than me. She's got the 50% of her is all my best bits, 50% of her is all the best bits of her mum, which is a lot better than me. So hopefully we can give her a lot more of a head start and push her along so that she can choose what she wants to do. I'm not going to force her down any path. I'm not going to make her go and pursue business or whatever, but I'm going to give her the tools to do so that she can choose, so that she has choice.
Yeah, I love that. And so just kind of touching on that then, when it comes to education, if you're looking at primary schools and high schools, are you even considering that? And if you're not considering that, what's the alternative? Because I know Chris and I, we've had these conversations, and I don't particularly like the secular societal typical schools that we see in society at the moment. I don't think it educates them in the direction that I want my son to be educated in, but what's the alternative?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I don't think school is actually about anything that you learn. I think that school is about who you meet. Do you remember? I don't know how to do long division, Do you remember that shit? It's like I've never needed to. I don't remember how to do any of that year 12 physics that I did. I don't remember anything about geography. I don't think it's about it all.
You remember
like
history, though. I can say that.
I don't actually remember history, which is a big shame because I wasn't a very good student, if I'm frank. But there's a lot at school where I just believe it's teaching you how to learn. And I think it's teaching you how to be social. I think that's what you actually get out of school. And so I think if we look at it as like, is school going to teach you how to do your taxes? No. Is school going to teach you anything remotely useful? Probably not. But is school going to give you an opportunity to learn how to learn stuff for the sake of learning? Yeah, and that works for some people. Probably a pretty low percentage, but that is one potential use for school. The next thing is, does it teach you how to conflict resolve, how to problem solve, how to deal with people, how to deal with a fuckwit teacher, a person in authority who has a power trip? We all know those ones. Does it teach you how to deal with bullies? Does it teach you how to not be a bully as well? I think those are the key parts of school. So when I'm looking for a school, I'm probably not going to be looking for a school or schooling system which is going to make my kid the smartest. You know, I grew up in Sydney, as I said. And there was a school down the road called James Roos. James Roos had the most incredibly brilliant, talented kids ever. They were a selective school, and they always topped the ATAR results. They were absolutely brilliant. But you put those kids in the workplace, and they just bumble, and they just fuck up, and they just cannot do it. There are a few who are exceptional out of that who do really, really well. But a lot of them have a tough time because they're not socially inept and they're not socially taught, like, how to succeed. The kids, and I even look in my school, there's a few guys who are exceptionally brilliant. One of them ended up managing like a 7-Eleven, you know, and he's like one of the top, most brightest minds. Not that there's anything wrong with a 7-Eleven, but I don't think when you think of like not the ducks of your school, but one of those top guys, you don't think career prospects like managing a 7-Eleven, right? And it goes to show that academics aren't the only things that matter. Because I've got a few mates, I'm no brainiac by any means, but I think I've done pretty well. And I've got a few mates who are doing exceptionally well, who are also the same level as me in school, where we didn't do extraordinarily well academically, but learnt a lot socially. I think that's the most important aspect of school, and that's what I'm going to be looking for.
Yeah, for sure. So, James, we're starting to get towards the end of the time, and obviously we're very conscious of your time as well, but we do tend to wrap things up with a couple of questions. One of them health and fitness related. Now, obviously, this is where you come from. It's my passion. It's where Ken and I first met, and the question is usually, what do you do for your health and fitness? And obviously, we know the ever-famous... I always say dad bod, that people can get. It's obviously not a problem that you have, but your clients would generally have that as well. So a couple of questions with this. We know you're from your bodybuilding and physique days, and obviously your life's changed. So first part of the question is, what do you do now, and what do you like to do for your health and fitness? And the second part of the question is, for dads who don't have a base in health and fitness, how would you encourage them to be able to start their journey and stay in shape?
I'll answer the second one first and then go on to the first. So if you don't have a base in health and fitness, you don't know where to start, get a coach, right? Don't try and do it on your own. That is so stupid. I always use a story, and I won't ramble on too long, but there was a person that I met who had self-made written on their knuckles, right? And they prided themselves on being self-made. And it is the fucking dumbest thing ever. Why? Because you are created by a mother and a father, right? So therefore you are not self-made right at the very root. Next thing, on those knuckles, right? Did you draw that tattoo yourself? Or did somebody else do it for you? So even your tattoo is not self-made. Nothing about you is self-made. Drop the arrogance, drop the hubris, go out and humble yourself and and maybe you'll learn that maybe someone knows a little bit more than you. Maybe, just maybe, right? Go get a coach straight away. Fastest shortcut to success. I've spent millions of dollars on mentoring. Best money I've ever spent. Next thing after that, going back to the first question, what do I do? I get lots of coaches. So I do lots of stuff. So number one, I just make sure that I train regularly. I do jiu-jitsu and I lift. So I do jiu-jitsu about 4 to 5 times a week, and then I try and lift 3 to 4 times a week. Next thing, I'm down 20 kilos on my peak. So back when I was bodybuilding, I was 105 kilos. I'm down at about 85 kilos, right? Why? Because being bigger means you're going to die sooner. Compare a Great Dane to a Chihuahua, right? Not going to talk about the quality of dog. We're not going to get into that. But the Great Dane lives, 10 years? The Chihuahua lives for 20 odd. Okay. Why? Because it's smaller, and smaller means less stress on your blood vessels, stress on your heart, just stress on your organs and body in general, which allows you to live longer, right? The next thing that I do is I get acupuncture done every single week. I get a massage done every single week. I get chiro done every single week. And then I also use this little sexy thing, my Aura ring, which doesn't just look fantastic on my hand, but also it's, Soph wouldn't let me use it as a wedding ring. I was very upset. What it does, it tracks all my biomarkers and monitors my stress levels and pretty much gives me a snapshot on my body. Yes, it would be better if I were present and I could just feel my body. That's always the best thing. But when we get busy in business, we forget about that stuff. So this is here as a constant reminder to make sure that I sleep enough, that I recover enough, and that I'm taking the appropriate steps to make sure I crush it.
Over to my last question then. So this is one question, I always ask everybody to try and get an understanding in terms of who they are and what they haven't been asked in the past. And so what is one question no one's ever asked you around being a dad, generating wealth, running a business, balancing time, that you secretly wish someone had asked you?
Fuck, that's a great question, man. You're going to make me think deep on that. I wish someone talked more about all the good parts of it and asked more questions around the best parts. What are you looking forward to? When I talked about becoming a dad while running a business, while trying to stay jacked and trying to be able to choke people out really well, I was like, people always focused on, make most of your sleep while you can, or make the most of your freedom. And there was always like this negative aspect towards having a kid. And people were talking about all the time how hard it is and how difficult it is. I put up a post the other night, maybe slightly inflammatory, but I was talking about how fucking awesome my sleep is and how good my recovery markers are, because they're incredible. And I got a kid who's, 3.5 weeks old. So naturally that pissed a few people off, and I may have intended to do so. But they were all focusing on the negative. Just you wait till it gets bad. It's like, motherfucker, I bought a house, a very, high value house, and you said, it's going to be stressful, affording that and looking after a house. It's so different to an apartment. I bought a dog, and you said, it's going to be stressful looking after a dog. I got married. Marriage is difficult. It's all this sort of stuff. And people always focus on how stressful all these incredible things are. Same thing with the kid. Just you wait till you run out of sleep. Just you wait till you start fighting with your wife. I wish more people asked me, how are you going to be more successful? How are you going to make this more fun? What are you going to do to make this work to your life so you can have your cake and eat it too? It's like, I'm making more money than ever now when I have a kid. I'm happier in my relationship with my wife than ever with a kid. I'm so in love with my kid. I have a brilliant relationship with my dog. We do heaps of stuff. I get plenty of time with my chickens. I'm strangling people better than ever, right? I'm still shredded and I'm still healthy and I still feel incredible, all that sort of stuff, because I was really focused on making it so that I had my cake and I can eat it too. And I really wish I was asked more. I'm sorry I'm rambling on a little bit here, but you're making me think. I really wished I was asked more. How can you be more successful as you're doing all of this? How can you incorporate this in your life?
Well, hey, look, let me be the first to ask you, how can you be more successful incorporating all of these things in your life? Cool. Raise the bar. You said that at the start of the call.
Standards.
I love it.
I love that.
I love it. Nice and straight to the point with standards. So, James, for people who are following that have been inspired by this and want to connect with you and be able to raise their standards in life, where can they find you?
Just type in James Cant. I'll pop up eventually. My pixel will find you and you'll never be able to get rid of me again. No. Just type in James Cant on Facebook or on Instagram and just drop me a message. I've got a bub now, so I literally just sit there, hold her and text people. That's my life. So if you want to have a chat, you want to reach out, I'm more than happy to help you out. And two, as well, because they're mates of you guys, anybody who listens to this and anyone who is finding, okay, cool, money's going well, career's going super well, but I'm not as happy with being a dad as what I'd like to be. I'm not happy in terms of how my relationship's going. I'm not as healthy as what I'd like to be. Or you're just feeling like the rest of life is kind of falling to the wayside. It's like you're a king at work, you're a pauper at home. Because they're mates of yours, anyone who listens to this, you can come on, shoot me a message and we'll give you 4 weeks of coaching for free and we'll turn that around like really, really quick for you. Okay. And we'll fix all that sort of stuff. The average person takes about 3 days to notice a difference. Okay. That's the average person. And then because they're listening to this podcast, I take it they're slightly above average. So it'll be a little bit faster for you. Cool. So just shoot me a message if you want access to that.
James, thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it. Until next time, guys, this is the Dad Bub Show, and we'll see you soon. That's it from us on this episode on the Dad Bub Show. If you want to find out a little bit more about us, head on over to www.dadbub.com. Until next time, see you next week.